Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Minimalist Educator Podcast. Christine and I are excited to talk to Jessica Holloway and Carrie Bishop today. They are co-authors of the book, Make Your School Irresistible, The Secret to Attracting and Retaining Great Teachers. And it's super fun to have another set of co-authors on the show. So obviously we're going to be asking you a little bit about that process too. But welcome to the show, Jess and Carrie. It's nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us, Tammy.
Yeah, we're excited to have a conversation this morning.
Yeah. Okay. So of course there's like always so many questions that we want to ask you, but let's start with maybe how did the two of you determine your writing partnership? So like how did you know each other and how did you determine this was the thing that you were going to write about? Loaded question, first thing. Jess, do you want to start?
Sure. Carrie and I have known each other for a while. Um, First as colleagues at a middle school. Well, actually, I think I first started as a parent of your oldest. Yes, because she rescued me on parent teacher night when I ran out of copies. And I'll never forget, I was like deer in the headlights, and she was like, "Do you need copies? I know how to make copies. I'm a teacher." I was like, "Oh, yes, yes, I need copies." I don't know. It was, yeah, she saved me. I remember that. But I was her daughter's teacher. And then she came up from elementary school to teach at the middle school with me for a few years. We were colleagues in the ELA department. And then I moved into the coaching role there at the school. So I was her coach, and she taught my oldest when he got to the school. And then we had like developed a friendship over time. And then as we moved into different roles, I ended up being the coach while your daughter, her second daughter, was at the school. And then when she was at a middle school as a coach, my middle child was over there. So like we've taught or supported each other's kids in education, but also as colleagues and as friends. So that has just kind of kept us connected. And then, it's one of those, we have a voice and we hear a lot of things being in a coaching role, and we have these conversations because Carrie and I kind of we're each other's safe space. So we have lots of conversations about, the success and struggles of coaching roles. And we just kind of felt like there's a lot of things to be shared that sometimes isn't shared just because of either trust or opportunity. And so there were things that we were privy to that we felt like needed to be shared with the broader audience to give teachers a voice, also to give leadership some insight into some things that may or may not be happening in their schools and give them some thoughts about it. So I kind of asked Carrie if she was willing to go on this journey with me, and she reluctantly was like, "Sure, we'll see where this goes." Do you want to add anything to that, Carrie? Because I don't know if that really captures the whole spirit of your
I think,
response.
I think, yes, you hit on a lot of it. I think it was definitely Jessica's desire to write a book. And so she kind of had the vision and was like, I want to write a book. And I was like, well, that sounds neat. Good. I will support you. And I think I have had some crazy experiences. So I had some stories that I think she was like, well, I kind of want some of your stories in the book. Um, I will say what really led me to say yes was that I care very much about people and relationships. And if I can do anything to help a leader more effectively shepherd the people in their care, if I can do anything to help a teacher have a better experience or for children and families to be better served, I'm definitely here for it, whether that's writing a book or anything else for that matter. So that was kind of what won me over.
I love that you were so very much a part of each other's community before you even started on the writing journey together. That's really special. So I love the idea, the premise of this book, like making your school irresistible, teacher retention. It's such a really cool idea. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've discovered about what makes people stay versus what makes people leave?
Over to you,
Um,
Carrie.
yeah, I was gonna say, um, well, I think that's definitely something we wanted to address in our book in an actionable way. We wanted to equip school leaders with strategies that are things that they can do that don't cost more money and um, that don't involve things that are outside of their realm of control or influence. And so honestly, I think that when teachers feel seen and heard and valued, I think when we listen to them, when they believe they have voice, when they can see themselves as part of a greater purpose, I think that leads them to stay. I think that we do have to provide a work-life balance that they see as sustainable. And some of that comes from listening and figuring out what are the things that we need to change. What are the systems and structures that I have the ability to influence or change? And how can I do that in a way that still provides the excellence that I'm desiring? But I think when people stay, it's because they feel connected with their team and their leader, and they're part of something, and they want to continue being part of that. And when they leave, honestly, it's often as simple as I don't feel connected here anymore. I don't feel like I want to continue investing. I'll let Jessica build on that thought. Mine's pretty simple.
Yes, and I think that rings true in conversations that we've had. And we surveyed educators for an article that we wrote that specifically said what makes you want to stay and what makes you want to leave. And a lot of it on the stay piece was trust. Like, do they feel like they're trusted to do their job? And do they feel valued? Like, those were the two, they might have said it in different words, but those were the two recurring responses. And as far as leaving, a lot of it was they no longer felt like they had a voice. So they were kind of felt powerless and didn't really have a place, kind of going back to that connected piece, or they didn't see an opportunity for growth. And so they felt like they had to leave in order to move forward in their career.
Yeah, that's really interesting, but also like not surprising, right? Like just kind of we all have a ton of years behind us in education, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone say they've left teaching because of the children, honestly. It's always something else, which says a lot about what teachers need in their role. Um, Something that you two wrote about in this book was some three components to recruitment and retention, and we love some alliteration. And so you two chose invite, invest, and inspire. So how did you land on those as your kind of big three ideas to recruit and retain teachers?
So, as we were talking out all the things that we wanted to say, we were kind of trying to figure out how to organize all of our thoughts. We're like, well, there's all the thoughts. How does this come together? And as we talked it out, it kind of ended up being like a life cycle of a teacher experience at a school. So first, how do you invite them in and want them to be at your school? How, when you have them at your school, how do you invest in them? And then whether they're at your school or leaving to continue their journey, how do you inspire them to keep going?
I love that. Oh, sorry, go, Christine.
It's okay. It's okay. No, I'm just wondering because we've been talking about, the individual teachers about whether they feel seen and valued and have a voice and things like that. I'm wondering whether you feel systems play into this as well. Like, is it is it an individual thing, or is it more a bigger systemic thing that goes on? And if there are systems that play into it, what sort of systems are instrumental either in retaining or losing teachers?
I definitely think we always rise or fall to the level of our systems. So we've talked a lot about, even in our current roles and in previous roles, always wanting to put in place systems and structures so that the work will transition. It's not person dependent. So we definitely would fall on that side of things. But I think there are systems you can put in place in terms of inviting people in to your school. And every day that you get up and speak, whether it's some sort of an event at at your school that you're a part of, you can invite people there. There are probably parents there, grandparents there who are educators who they may know someone that wants to be at your school, or they themselves may one day decide they want to apply if you have an open position. So I think it is a mindset, but it's also, there are systems you can put in place as far as attending teacher recruitment fairs. What are you putting on social media? And I think once you can get a system going and have some sort of like predictable cadence, then that becomes a lever that can be used by the next person who serves in your role, whatever that role is, whether it's a formal role or an informal role. I think I really do love a good system, and that's why we try to come up with actionable steps in our book. These are things you can put in place that can become the way we do things at blank school. And once that happens, it's like, well, this is a thing. This is a thing we do, and it doesn't really matter who does it, but once we know we've all seen it done well, it's easy to replicate because I do think it's important for teachers to feel seen and heard and valued, but I do think systems can be in place that facilitate that. And when those systems are absent, you can feel their absence for sure.
This makes me think about the piece where you write about school identity. So how school's identity can really, I mean, social media helps with that, right? Like it helps relay your message to people. So how did you see that, or how did you, through the surveys that you did, see that come out in some of the responses? Like, was that a big element where people were really invested in, like, this school really stands for this and I really understand who they are, versus like, I'm not really sure what this school is about? What was that like?
Yeah, I think um, it was it was clear in some of the responses that, I'm passionate about supporting English language learners. And this is a school that was going to give me that opportunity and had support for that. So that's why I wanted to work at that school. Or this school had a focus in performing arts. And while I may not be a dance teacher, I am an English language arts teacher, and I want to give my students opportunities to perform poetry. And so this felt like a place where I could pursue that. And also, the flip side of that, there were people that said, I thought this school was this. And when I got there, I realized that is not what the school was. And I needed to leave because it was not a place where I was going to fit. And they almost buyer's remorse, I guess is what you could say, because they didn't feel like what they were told the school focused on and was about ended up being true. And so I think the clearer you are on what your priorities are, what your values are, what you're committed to do, will attract the right people. And sometimes we think this is the person we want, and so we try to sell it to them that this is the school they want to be at, when you need to stop trying to like fit somebody else and know exactly who you are as a school and attract those people in that are going to see the same vision and want to do the work that you're doing at your school. And it is a applicant's world out there. They have all the choices. And so I get the pressure to want to, put yourself and say, here's where we do this for you, and this is what it is. But if you can't follow through on that, you're going to end up losing them, and then maybe even them walking away with a bad experience, and then they're going to talk about that. So it's almost better to not even hire them and just say that wasn't the right fit versus, oh, I worked there and this is not at all what it was supposed to be, and then have this bad narrative that's out there. So I do think it helps to really know what you're about as a school, and then be able to communicate that, even if it makes recruiting teachers a little bit more difficult.
I'm just wondering whether you came across any instances of people who, like, it's the only school option nearby. Like, this is the only school in my area. This is the only school that speaks the language I speak, something like that. Did that come up at all? And does that bring with it a whole different set of barriers and so on?
We did interview, I know of one, I can think of one that we interviewed who there was really only one high school in their community, and she taught there for a long, long time. She did retire early when there was a leadership change, but she talked about some really happy years there and how close the faculty was and how it was a sense of family. And then her choice to retire at a relatively young age was or did stem from some changes that she just couldn't really feel like she wanted to support and be a part of anymore. And so I think that disenfranchised sort of feeling, um, I would say at the heart of it, when you read her interview, is a feeling that at one time she had voice and she was listened to. And then once she felt she no longer was listened to, that she no longer wanted to be a part of things. And I just think, again, I'm now serving in a head of school position, so I can say I think you have so much coming at you, so many decisions, so much to accomplish, but it is so important to slow down and listen. And if a teacher comes and shows up at your door and wants to tell you something, like really listen and really listen to what's being said, but then really listen to maybe the bigger, like what's not being said, and the fact that someone took their planning time to come make sure they found you, and maybe just be sure that people feel heard and follow up if you have questions, because that listening when you're busy and you have so much you're trying to do, it can be just so important as a leader. I can't emphasize that enough.
And I'll add onto that, back to the beginning thoughts about only in a certain location. Um, we also know and have talked to people who are willing to drive to be at a place where they feel valued and where they're in line with the vision of the school. And we're talking an hour one way. They're willing to do that because they are happy and fulfilled, and that's where they want to be. So I think, again, going back to, like, if you know exactly who you are, people will drive an hour one way to come work for you and work towards that vision that you have for your school. So you could say, if you do it right, the drive isn't an issue, the location isn't the issue. For some people it is. Some people can't, they're just not willing or able to drive an hour to the other place. But for some it is.
I would think too, yeah, that's such an important point to make, because sometimes that hour drive is someone's decompression time or just alone time to process. And so, that's like a non-issue for people. I'm wondering about, and I don't know how you might respond to this, because I feel like we're at this point in education, and I feel like we've kind of been at this point for a long time, where there just isn't enough teachers to fill places. So sometimes schools will just hire people because they're bodies to have in spots and they need adults. And so how then, what's something schools could do that, you have all these new teachers, let's say, who've just graduated from a program, and you got to make them fit into your building because perhaps they just didn't have a choice. They just needed a job. They had to fill spaces. So what would you like if, when working with schools or talking with school leadership, what direction would you point them to make sure that things work out?
I think that falls under the investing and the onboarding process and making sure it always starts with like our core values, our mission. Let's make sure that we clearly understand what that looks like when we live it out day to day. But it's also making sure that they have access to the resources, the mentor that they need. There's so many questions. Whether you're a novice teacher or a veteran teacher, when you join a new faculty, you're going to have a lot of questions about where do I put this? How do we do this? Even at my school, as we this year had some people join our faculty, calibrating around, how we provide feedback on specific things. There's a lot of things that have to be considered. I still constantly am providing, support around how we communicate with parents. And no matter how long you've been doing this, I think we're all better collectively than anybody in isolation. And that's where having those systems and structures in place can really pay off big time in terms of onboarding and assimilating people into your team. So I think that's true in any field. I think it's essential in education.
I think we're just about at a point where we need to wrap up, and we definitely want to hear one last thing from both of you. We love to wrap up with a pair down pointer. So one little tip or strategy from each of you about how we can streamline things, make life a little bit easier.
One thing that we've come back to a lot here recently is prioritizing the people that you have to solve problems. And when you do that, you realize oftentimes the solution to your problems are already in your building. You just have to get the right voices in the room in order to develop the solutions. And sometimes the solutions don't cost anything. They're restructuring something, changing something, adding something in. And so, that also, when you prioritize the people who aren't directly involved or impacted by whatever problem you're trying to solve, it also ensures that they have a voice, that they're valued, that they feel trusted to help solve this problem. And then there's a shared ownership in it, going through the iterations of did it work? Yes or no? Let's try something else. And they'll walk through that journey with you if they're part of it versus, well, boss, it didn't work. What's your next solution? And so if you prioritize the people you have to help you solve problems, oftentimes you are more successful and it's more sustainable.
Mine's pretty simple. I would just say when we talk about making your school irresistible, what we're really talking about is the culture that you create. We talked a little bit about identity, but we know that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And the reality is that you're building a culture. And as a school leader, or even as a teacher who has influence, I mean, you get to decide what kind of teammate you're going to be. We each get to have a hand in shaping culture. That is not something that someone who has a certain leadership role does. That's something we do together. We build a culture. And that's a big part of when we talk about identity. I think that's something that is extremely important and is going to determine whether people that you invite choose to join your team and whether people choose to stay.
Those are powerful points. Thank you so much, ladies. It was so great to chat with you about your book. It's one that every school leader needs, and so they can find it in all the spots. And your links are in the show notes, so people can find you if they want to grab that book. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.